have things to say. So I don't have that much sort of set things to say. I think that I have, I mean, I would say probably of the people in this room, I am the person who gets most hate speech and trolling on Twitter of an anti-Semitic and other basis. When I get into any kind of spat, which seems to have to be quite a lot, I probably get about 200 or 300 a day that could be theoretically reported to the police. I never do report them to the police. I have a particular thing that I do as a comedian, which goes against, actually, what is a sort of basic law of the internet, if that is a law of the internet, an unwritten law of the internet, which is don't feed the trolls. That's a thing that people say, don't get involved with these people. As a comedian, and this is kind of an artistic judgment, really, I think, no, they're hecklers. They're very obscene and abusive hecklers, but as a heckler, you know, a comedian's job is to really repeat the heckle, so the audience can understand it, and then to put them down with something, you know, hopefully witty, or, you know, attacking them. And that does serve two purposes. It mocks them, which is actually a really good thing to do, I think, to online trolls, because they're always very, very narcissistic, self-serious men fulfilling some kind of deeply insignificant gap in their lives, and that is a good thing to do. But also it brings them to the light. And I don't agree that if we just ignore these people, they will go away. Because as we watch the course of the history of this technology, the truth is that they mobilise with this technology in very sort of extreme ways. And I've actually been the victim, and I hate to use the word victim, of coordinated threats on Twitter. And there's a lot of crossover. I recently got into a discussion which was actually about misogyny. I posted something that I thought was misogynistic, and next thing I knew, the alt-right, who are very organised, had mobilised, and I was getting an awful lot of anti-Semitic stuff, which was nothing to do with what I talked about, and they were all, I noticed, they were all called Groyper in various different ways, and they all used a frog, you know, the Pepper the Frog thing, and they all posted eyes at me, a cartoon of eyes, and that means, I discovered, I didn't know this before, that they are watching me, and they are watching me as a Jew. That's what it means. They have spotted that I'm a Jew, which is interesting because my Twitter biography is Jew. So that's fairly straightforward. I've really never tried to hide that particular fact. In terms of the distinction between hate speech and free speech, I very much agree with Dave, really, but there's something I would say that's specific to anti-Semitism, perhaps, although I'm sure there are other racisms that these overlaps happen within. And that is, of course, this thing about, you know, what is anti-Zionism and what is anti-Semitism. And the truth about that, as indeed the truth about jokes, people say you mustn't joke about X, Y, and Z subject. That is always incorrect. You have to look at the individual joke, because a laugh is never necessarily mocking. A laugh is never necessarily targeted one way or the other. You have to look at the context. Similarly, it's entirely possible in all sorts of ways to criticise and indeed attack the state of Israel. What you have to look at is the language and the means and the tone by which you do that. And if you include in your attack on someone, and you are claiming that you're attacking the state of Israel, you include all sorts of ancient anti-Semitic tropes. When you do that, to do with Jewish cabals and to do with control of global money and all those things that massively predate the state of Israel, then you are being anti-Semitic. And actually it's not that hard to distinguish between the two. You look out for those particular tropes, and that's how you do it. And something that happens to me a lot, happened to me quite recently, some of you may have read the news about it, with George Galloway, but I'm not actually going to quote George Galloway just at the minute. This is a different example. I did a joke that was about Trump. Trump had tweeted, "The wall is the wall," about his Mexican wall, and I said, I have to say I preferred Pink Floyd's version. And then a man called John Steinbeck, who's not, I think, the author, said, "The pure racist hate in the USA's Mexico wall is surpassed only by the genocidal apartheid occupation of Palestine by the racist Israeli invaders." Now, the key element of that is whether or not he's right about that. I'm not really interested in whether he's right or wrong. What I'm interested in is, why does he think it applies to me to hear that tweet? And there's only one reason, which is I am Jewish.